welcome to this edition of Class is in Session. I'm your host, Ashley Stevens, and this show exclusively on Black Enterprise highlights the latest happenings inside HBCU classrooms, public policy issues facing these historic institutions, the business side of HBCU sports, and we love to highlight HBCU alum who are on the move. So today we are super excited. We're going to talk about HBCU SpringComing. It's an annual festival for college alumni held in various cities, and it's also raised and awarded more than $250,000 in scholarships for HBCU students. Today's featured guests are Lauren Grove of the Grant Access LLC and George 2.0 of Listen to Me. They've collaborated on this HBCU SpringComing for many years now, so let's get into it. Hello and welcome, Lauren and George.
Hello.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited. Y'all have the fresh HBCU SpringComing gear, the colorful gear on. So we're excited to hear more about that. But before we do that, I want you to tell our audience a little bit more about each of you and what we do. So I'll start with Lauren. Tell us about you and the Grant Access LLC.
Awesome. Well, my name is Lauren Grove. I'm the Chief Experience Architect for the Grant Access, and we are a full service event planning and production firm. We work with corporations and nonprofits to execute their vision and their dreams. And so we turned 10 years old this year, very similar to HBCU SpringComing. We do really, really great work.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. And George 2.0 Peters, tell us about Listen to Me.
Yeah, well, Listen to Me is a full service production company, and we are really proud to say that we close the gaps between the idea and the execution. As an artist myself, we've learned to sort of communicate and speak the language that artists need when they have these crazy ideas about what needs to happen and what they want to happen. And we tell them what can happen and often how much it costs. And so between branded activations and stage production, acting, coaching, et cetera, film development, we find ourselves really finding a lot of fun in producing things that come out of people's imaginations.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. You work with some pretty big names in your experience, right?
I have. I started my touring life with the auteur, Janelle Monáe. I've spent a lot of time on stage and producing and DJing with the classic man, Jidenna, as well as some other names as well. And I found that throughout that time, I've taken a lot of the skills that I've learned in those spaces and found out how I can communicate them in large part. And that's what led to me starting a production company.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. So it sounds like with each of your unique backgrounds, event planning, production, entertainment, it blended, because I want to hear about that. How did you two connect to form HBCU SpringComing?
Well, as it turns out, George and I are cousins. And so HBCU SpringComing started on my couch one day after church. Shout out to First Corinthians Baptist Church in Harlem, New York. We got home after church, George and his wife, my cousin Jovian, and we were just sitting on the couch chatting, talking about homecoming and talking about how I go back pretty much every year. George goes back pretty much every year. But if you went to Tougaloo College, you're not flying back from New York City to go to homecoming every year. It's a little far. And so we thought, what if we just kind of bring homecoming to New York City? And that is what happened. The first year, we would have been happy to get 100 people in the park with a Bluetooth speaker and, raise a couple $100 to get somebody a new mattress pad for their dorm. And the first year we had about 1,000 people. Wow. And so it just grew from there. But the inception of SpringComing was literally, it was almost like a vision from God after church. We were like, why don't we just kind of do this ourselves?
Love
after church and then after brunch. So
there was food. It
was a vision from God on a full stomach. And I think
it might have been a mimosa as well involved, but net.
One of the things that we were really excited about in our relationship as cousins is, as we've talked about, the fact that everybody that went to an HBCU feels like family anyway. So there's certain language, there's certain tradition, there's even nomenclature that we share that we know. So even with the name SpringComing, and I do pride myself as a wordsmith, but everybody knows that SpringComing is like, oh, you mean like homecoming in the spring? It was one of those things you could just kind of click and understand. Yeah. And in speaking, when sitting at the couch with Lauren and some of our other friends, we decided we needed to put HBCU in front of it because HBCUs deserve to have that highlighted lens, right? To make sure there was no confusion about what was happening, that this was an HBCU SpringComing. And so starting in New York, of course, with Lauren being an event planner, her mind just started ticking about what we could do. And it just turned out to be very organic. It follows the traditional schedule of an HBCU homecoming. And so people knew what to do. They knew what to expect. It was just up to
Mhm.
us to facilitate it.
Love to hear it. So you said it's been going on for 10 years. Tell us some of the cities that you've been in across those 10 years, and also the cities and dates that it's going to be in here in 2024.
Yeah,
So
certainly. So
we
please, Lon, go.
No, sorry. We are very used to tag teaming these conversations.
Sure.
So SpringComing is on technically its ninth year, going into its 10th year, and so we're calling this our Road to Tenure. It is going to be a continuous year of activations and events that the HBCU SpringComing team hopes to bring to the world. And so, as mentioned, we started in New York. We kept most of the events centralized to Harlem because that's where we lived at the
Mhm.
time, and it was our way of also supporting Black businesses in Harlem and just bringing more awareness to them. And so, about 3 years ago, the city of Birmingham and their amazing mayor Randall Woodfin, who is a esteemed graduate of Morehouse College, he came to us and said and said, "Hey, can you bring this to us? Can you bring this to Birmingham?" And so we are going into our third year in Birmingham, Alabama, which is a very unique place because Alabama actually has the highest number of HBCUs in the country as a state. And so there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of support there. And so we're really
Mhm.
happy to bring it or we were really happy to bring it to Birmingham for a third year. We are actually going into our first year in Los Angeles this year, which is super
Mhm.
exciting. People have been asking us to bring this to LA for a long time. And so here we are. So it's coming on May 3rd through 5th in
Mhm.
LA. Our New York weekend will be April 18th through the 21st, and Birmingham was March 28th through the 30th.
Awesome, 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 awesome. So tell us a little bit about, you said it kind of resembles a typical or traditional HBCU homecoming. So George, what can folks expect at a spring coming? Is there music, the food, are there vendors? Do you partner with folks or organizations? You mentioned Black owned businesses. Give us a kind of a run of show, let's say, for a spring coming.
Yeah, sure. The answer is E, all of the above. And what I can say that we are proud to be able to say is that, though there are so many things that are unique to the HBCU experience that we all share, there are differences per campus, right? Per
Mhm.
region. And we decided that should be the same for the cities as well. So we don't take New York Spring Coming and just put it on Birmingham. And Birmingham Spring Coming isn't just going to be put on LA. Each of those regions have their own indigenous kind of like activity,
Mhm.
right? But there are some through lines that we share throughout all of them. So you will have school days, which is our largest event, which is basically our yard fest. It's like a tailgate. And while we're familiar with the intercollegial competition of football that takes place during a fall homecoming, in New York, we spend more time with basketball because that happens to be more of the inner city
Mhm.
sport. We're also going to still throw them spades and play
Mhm.
dominoes. You'll find that in every
Yeah.
city, right? In Birmingham, we're going to be out in front of City Hall at Lynn Park. And so it has sort of the same feel with school days, but there will be pop-up tennis nets there, right? And then
Mhm.
in LA, we're going to move more towards the beach culture, where we're going to have some bonfires, and we're also going to do some hiking, which is very, very unique to the LA community as well, right? And in addition to that, we're going to do a pop-up roller skating activity. So each of these kind of fun activities are surrounded by what you'll find that kind of goes through each of the city schedules. So on Thursday of the typical homecoming night, you find that people are showing up. They're looking for a place to
Mhm.
go, a place to come kick it. We do that in every city, right? On Friday, you'll find that one of our presenting sponsors, our presenting sponsor, Indeed, is going to be hosting in New York a work from here experience, where at the Indeed offices, we'll be able to bring folks who will be coming in town and have them sort of have their virtual activity in person. We're happy to say that in New York on Thursday, we're going to be doing a special event called Toast to the Living Gallery, where we honor those folks, alum from our community and allies who have been helping HBCU grads move forward in various industries. And that's a special toast, a special sip that we have there in New York. In Birmingham, we have a unique event that only takes place in Birmingham, and it's called Sips and Sounds. So we do toast in more than one
Mhm.
city, but there's a little variance,
Mhm.
variance depending upon where we are. But the thing that we're most proud about that happens in every single city is that we provide resources to close the gaps for those students that need help. filling that last little bit of their coffers in order to go to school. And so whether that's in Birmingham, working with the Birmingham Promise, whether that's the Poussin Scholarship that we are using nationally to find recruits that need money for school, the main focus of what we're doing is to take all of this energy and all of this HBCU pride and make sure that we can provide resources for students that want to attend HBCUs.
Wow, love to hear it. So you're partying literally with a purpose, not just partying, but it's a gathering, right? Like
Literally.
it's a gathering of
Absolutely.
like minds in different cities, like you mentioned, for folks that may not get to travel back for their actual homecoming. And I imagine this is open. Is this open to any college alum, whether or not they attended an HBCU?
It's open to anybody. Coincidentally, we realized after the first few years, about 30% of our attendees actually attended PWIs. And what we've realized is that HBCU SpringComing is such a camaraderie. It's such a moment of fellowship. And it's really about just getting like all of these educated Black folks together and the spirit that comes with that, regardless of the school that you went to. So please come out. If you went to Harvard, wear your Harvard sweatshirt. If you are a Delta from UNC Chapel Hill, come through, sis. Like, we want everybody to experience what we have grown up in and what feels like home to us.
Got it. You talk about what you've grown up in and what feels like home. So for each of you, where did you go to college? And I know you're HBCU proud, and why did you choose an HBCU? I'll start with Lauren.
Very, very proud. I went to the illustrious, because if it's not illustrious, then you probably didn't go. The illustrious Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. I'm a proud Rattler, 2-degree Rattler from FAMU, and I chose FAMU. I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina, and was surrounded by HBCU grads, but both of my parents attended PWIs, and so they always said if they could do it differently, they would have gone to HBCUs like their siblings did. And so that was the catalyst for me researching HBCUs. But I knew I wanted to get my MBA by about 10th grade. And so FAMU had an excellent 5-year MBA program. And so I'm a proud Rattler, still go back to homecoming every year. And now I'm able to activate with my clients at homecoming, which is super exciting as well. So kind of merging these two worlds together. So
Love to hear. FAMU Rattler. And George.
Yes.
I went to Morehouse College, and it's so funny. I still feel like I'm a part of that community. We're the kind of family where you just never really leave that brotherhood. Some of my best friends, fellows that stood next to me in my wedding, they're all people that I met at Morehouse College. And it's very interesting because I knew I wanted to go to Morehouse College around 3rd grade. I did a Black History report. And it was just the craziest thing. Martin Luther King went to Morehouse College, and I was like, oh, I'm going there. That's it. Like, there was never any other choice. There was no application anywhere else. This is like 3rd grade on. And both of my parents went to Cheney, which, as we know, is the oldest HBCU. So I knew about HBCUs, but in the way that about just, being Black and going to church, it was normal for me. And so I felt really drawn to it immediately. And the funny thing about it is a lot of people will say to you, well, why did you want to go to a school as a Black man with all Black men? Like, isn't there a monolith there that you want to escape? And as soon as we got there, you're sitting in the room and you're looking to your right and your left, as they tell you at all HBCUs, and you're trying to figure out what makes you different from these other gentlemen that you're with. And that was very important to me because I'd spent so much time being the Black guy in my classrooms, growing up in a predominantly white community. And so that was a thing that I could sort of stick my chest out about. And I was, president of the African American Club and in theater and whatever. And you're looking around and they ask you, well, who else was president of the African American Club? And everybody's like, yeah, me too. And you're like, well, who was captain of the track team? And they're like, yeah, man, me too. Well, who else had a 4-point? Okay, yeah. So now you're looking around and figuring out, well, what of this iron that's sharpening this iron is going to chip away some of this similarity and help you find your distinction. And that's something that we're really excited about as HBCU grads. There's been so much about HBCU communities that has been a part of the zeitgeist lately. All of your brands and your corporations want to put a marching band in every commercial that they can. But our job is to expose those who would otherwise not know about the depth and the richness of this culture, to see that we still have an opportunity to attend and tell our stories through attendance at these beautiful and illustrious historic institutions of higher education.
I also think that's what makes HBCU SpringComing unique. There are a lot of events and opportunities targeted towards HBCU students who absolutely
Mhm.
need it, right? But there are a lot of us that were attending HBCUs before it was popular and before it was
Yes.
cool. And
Yes.
honoring those alumni and what they are doing in their jobs, in their everyday lives with their families, really laying the foundation for the legacy of HBCUs that allows all of us eventually to send our children there, right? There's something to be said about that. And so I think that specifically because our festival is targeted towards alumni, it is a very unique opportunity for you to engage and share that is beyond homecoming at your university.
Love to hear that. Love to hear the uniqueness about HBCU Spring Coming. That's a really
Yeah.
big deal. And you both highlighted the value of your respective HBCUs and as a whole, and I think that's really important, especially because again, Spring Coming
Mhm.
is fostering the next generation or and current generation actually of HBCU
Yes.
students. I want to go back to the scholarship piece. George, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about what are the criteria, who's eligible, how are funds raised, and how much do you anticipate awarding across this 2024 year for HBCU students?
Yeah, so first I'd like to say that we proudly boast that in our road to tenure, going into our 10 year, we have awarded over $250,000 for students that want to attend HBCUs. And what's been really important to us is that most of our events across all three cities happen to be free.
Wow.
And so we're
Mhm.
able to celebrate in a way that encourages people to attend, understanding that their attendance is a part of this revelry and this reuniting energy, but that they are also contributing their resources that would have been spent towards students that want to go to schools. And that's something we talk to our partners about immediately. Anybody that
Yeah.
comes on board, any sponsor, any presenting sponsor, or anywhere you fall in the tier, you understand that a part of your return of your investment is that X amount of dollars will be going towards students. That's just the most important thing for us, right? And so this year is no different. Across all three cities, we have an opportunity to work with vetted scholarship institutions, right? So in Birmingham, as you may or may not know, this past weekend, we were able to award through the Birmingham Promise, which is a guarantee from the city that their students, their high school graduates, will have the opportunity to go to
Mm.
school. And that's great, right? But you also know that when you go to school, it's not just tuition,
Mhm.
right?
Mm-mm.
It's the gas money to get
Mhm.
there. As Lauren said before, it's the
Books,
mattress pad, it's the books,
sheets.
and this is an HBCU, it's also the drip, right? And these are
Yep.
no judgment. Whatever you need to spend money on while you're in school, we want to help kind of close
Yeah.
that gap, right? And so that makes it really easy for us to provide and put that resource right in the hands of students because we can work with this vetted institution. The same goes for the Poussin Scholarship, which is a foundation that was founded by 5 HBCU grads in the New York, New Jersey area. And so we have the privilege of working with them and their board to accept applicants to go through a rigorous application process and subsequent interview process. And then from there, after that money is awarded, we don't just let those students go off into the ether and hope that that they make it. We keep up with
Mhm.
them. We have an opportunity to receive video submissions from them so that our attendees know who they're helping, which is very important in our community, right? But
Mhm.
we also get an opportunity to say that we've graduated these students, and so going into our 10th year, we've looked at multiple graduating classes that from the beginning we've helped get through with our resources. And that just,
Mhm.
I mean, it's just overwhelming to us, as HBCU students that did have to find resources even while in school, to know that you not only have those resources, but to know that you have that community that wants to see you make it and will accept you back into the fold after graduation.
Love to hear that. Love to hear that. You think about, I know, I'm glad to hear that Birmingham was successful. You think about a state like Alabama, where, legislators are looking at, slashing or reducing or eliminating DEI programs. And
Yes.
you talk about
Mhm.
the value and importance of HBCUs, it's probably even more valuable than ever in terms of students having a safe
Yes.
space and you all providing resources for students
Yes.
to go. Lauren, how important is that for you all to kind of have a platform where you're helping other students to be able to say, I earned my degree from a Black college in a time when, Black people, ideas, thoughts, or programs that help to benefit us are not as valued?
Hmm.
I think that HBCUs in general, in addition to all of these states passing these laws, HBCUs in general, as much as they are being highlighted and lifted up, are also under
Mm,
attack. And I think that when you think about attending these other universities, that may not have the same outlook and may not have the same safe space for us to bring our thoughts and our ideas and our intellectual property even to the table, then you're really talking about the preservation of not only legacy but the future of what being Black in America looks
Mm.
like. And so making sure that our children have safe spaces to attend is up to us. And it's up to us preserving that legacy, not only in just spreading the good news about what an HBCU is, but also in investing our dollars. And so when we are talking to partners about supporting HBCU Spring Coming, as George mentioned, that a portion of their sponsorship dollars do go towards scholarships, you have to really pay attention to who these partners are, because they are really putting their money where their mouths
Yeah.
are, right?
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
Indeed has been our presenting sponsor. They're going into their third year as our presenting sponsor. This is a corporation that has definitely put the fact that they want Black folks to get jobs and keep jobs and earn jobs, and making sure that their investment in HBCU Spring Coming also shows an alignment with our community. And so when we are talking about companies that are giving money to a lot of these HBCU endeavors, it's important that we pay attention to
Yeah.
them. It's important that we also support them as customers. And so, you know, I think that the catalyst that drew people to HBCUs, that flame may be going out a little bit, but the passion that we as alumni have about keeping it going is going to rest within us, and keeping events like HBCU Spring Coming going, and making sure that we're still going to continue to do these college tours and continue to find students who need mentoring and mentorship, and just continuing that the flame may be going out from a corporate perspective, but that doesn't mean that it has to go out with
That's
us.
right. It does not have to go out with us. I like that. And part of keeping that flame going here at Black Enterprise, we often like to talk about pathways for creating wealth and generational wealth and legacy building,
Yeah,
right? So for college students,
yeah.
who may be watching, I always like to talk about career paths. And so I'd love for each of you to
Mm.
tell us, I'll start with George, what are some of the things that college students either should be studying or places they should intern, or just general advice you have for someone, a college student interested in getting into production, into creative branding, into entertainment? Because I know you wear a lot of hats. So, what would be your advice to college students seeking this type of work?
Yeah, I love that question because I can use my own example. I was an English literature major and theater minor while at Morehouse. And the thing that I know that I learned while at Morehouse was how to learn.
Mm.
I learned how to continually be a student, right? So regardless of your discipline, something you have to recognize is we're looking at the early or the late aughts when really what's happening in social media was brand new, right? There was not a Twitter or an X at the time, right? And if you think about sort of the investment in that space that perhaps a kid in his dorm room, whether that was high school or college, might have had, there wasn't really a line item for that at the time. And now it is the top line item in most of your creative briefs. How do we approach things socially? Well, the same thing is happening with AI right now. And so instead of trying to determine what is coming next, it's not like the stock market in that way, right? You need to determine what's inside of you that can be an evolution. What's a part of you that you can always use? What's a piece of you that you can always make malleable in whatever discipline you're in? Now, for me, back to the piece about learning to learn. When I first went on tour, I had to be a student. There were things and fires I was thrown right into. We always talk about, particularly at Wonderland when I started, it felt like a fast casual fast food
Mhm.
restaurant. You could be in charge of the fries, but like them burgers are burning.
Mm.
You need you need to go over there and flip the burgers, right? So being so like specific about your discipline might not be the way for you. I think that one of the most important things you can do is make sure that you know how to communicate, whether that is legibly or audibly. That's super important, but also how to
Mhm.
listen. That's a major part of
Mhm.
communicating, right? And I think even beyond that, knowing what it is that you really enjoy and finding something that you really like to do will help it feel less like
True.
work. There is so much
Mhm.
that you can do to brand yourself. There's so much you can do to build yourself, and it can all be fun. There are just multiple industries that are available that can be created out of things that you naturally love to do. And so my advice to any college student would be is to pick a discipline that is fun for you, something that you want to do, But while in that, because it's college, you can audit so many other spaces. Take an art class, even if you can't draw. Take an extra language, even if you're not, just kind of use that as the gumbo and the opportunity to learn from all the people that you're around. There is no better opportunity, no other like bastion of institutional knowledge that you'll expose yourself to other than college, and particularly at an HBCU. So just have fun as much as possible.
Love that. Love that. I like that. I like that advice. Thank you, George. And Lauren, you're a mastermind in event planning. So how did your
Yes.
journey come to be? And tell us what advice you'd have for college students.
So interestingly enough, I actually spent 10 years in media and advertising before starting my company, even though I started doing events essentially in college on internships and around campus. I knew it was something I loved, but my path to entrepreneurship was a little different. I did go into corporate for 10 years, and honestly, that experience was invaluable. And I meet a lot of students right now, with the rise of social media entrepreneurs, and not saying that that is not a viable career, but there is much to be said about taking a job and learning on someone else's time, so that you can apply the knowledge that you've learned in these corporate spaces to doing what you want to do
Mhm.
inevitably, that I think sometimes is missing from these conversations. Entrepreneurship is not easy. Um, and I believe it's a calling. And so specifically what I realized that my purpose and passion was to bring organization, and depth into chaotic spaces, right? And most events, corporate events specifically, because that's the field that we work in, most corporate events, you either are really good at them or you're not. And so we have a lot of clients that are like, yo, we have this idea. We don't know what it looks like inevitably. And so that's where we come in. We say, all right, this is what you can do. This is what you can't do. And as George mentioned, this is how much it's going to
Mhm.
cost, right? But the way I got there was utilizing all of these years of work in media and advertising. I worked for, two of the top four global advertising agencies. Started my career at the Nielsen Company and market research, right? So all of these are like they've all added to my pot of knowledge. And so I'm grateful for that time, even though I'm no longer in that industry, because it taught me so
Mhm.
much, specifically about what corporations were expecting from vendors and from businesses. And so I think we are able, and what makes the Grant Access unique is that we come to you like you're a corporation and I'm a
Yeah.
corporation, right? And so I know what you're expecting from me. And so I'm going to deliver that level of excellence every single time. But I wouldn't have had that purview had I not spent time on the other
Mhm.
side. So I would urge a college student, as George said, figure out what you like, but don't feel like you have to find a career in that right now. Maybe your
Yes.
career path is going to lead you somewhere else first. And it's okay to go to that other place because you can always come back. And so for me, I needed to go to that other place. I needed to grow a little bit. I needed to learn a little bit. I needed to understand what I didn't know.
Mhm.
And now I can thankfully do it all, right? Thank God I don't have to. Shout out to my team. But I'm equipped to do that now. So that's what I would recommend to a college student. Listen, know what you're good at and know what makes you tick. Know what you think is fun. You can always do that on the side, but like go and get a little experience first and figure out where are you lacking? Where there are things that you can learn, and where are the things you can learn on someone else's dime while you figure it out.
Love to hear that. Learn on someone else's dime while you're figuring it out. I love to hear
Amen.
that. And I guess speaking of, are there any volunteer or internship opportunities through HBCU SpringComing?
So we currently do not have an intern program, but we probably should, because George and I basically take 3 months off, maybe planning,
Maybe.
maximum a year,
Maybe. Right.
maybe 3 months out, right? 3 months off. So we do not have an internship program right now, but there's always an opportunity, to volunteer. George and I joke, as he mentioned earlier, that we're all kind of family, right? So if you show up at HBCU Spring Coming, if you show up on school day, Saturday, at 7 a.m. while we're loading in, we're going to hand you a box. So just know that there's always an opportunity to help out. We started very grassroots, and a lot of that is the magic, I think, of HBCU Spring Coming. And so we hope to continue that as we've grown and as our teams have gotten involved and as our companies have grown. We've been able to enlist a lot of help, but there's always something to be done. And so we urge you just to show up, shoot us an email, reach out online. We are more than happy to point you in the right direction of where your expertise can be applied.
Love to hear that. Love to hear it. And George, where can folks find out more? How can they RSVP or register in their respective cities for the HBCU Spring Coming?
Absolutely. I mean, and that's actually one of the ways in which you can volunteer, right? By registering in these cities. As we said before, most of these events are free, which means they don't cost anything but your time. And we're really happy to say that we don't spam anybody on our distro list. So if you give us your email address, if you give us your contact information, the information you get from us will be pertinent. And so we love to have you follow us at HBCU Spring Coming on Instagram and on X, as well as go to hbcuspringcoming.com, where you can RSVP and find broken out each city's events. And so even if you don't live in that city, you know somebody that does. And even if you don't know somebody that does, you know somebody that can drive to it. Even if you don't know somebody that can drive to it, you know somebody that should and can benefit from this programming. So what we'd love to have you do is to go to these sites, to share with students who you know might be considering going to college and maybe haven't even thought of HBCUs, so they can come and have this experience. For people that are in communities where there aren't HBCUs, this is absolutely even more important, right? So to Lauren's point earlier, whether you went to a predominantly white institution, whether you went to school at all, you can come and register and be a part of telling this story. It's incumbent upon us as masters of the oral tradition in our community to tell the story the way we need it to be told. And so being a part of that means following us on social media, registering online, and making sure that folks know the good work that we're doing at HBCU Spring Coming.
Love.
It's like a weekend long cookout. Who wouldn't want to come, right? It's great.
Love to hear it. Well, I'm all about the weekend long cookout. So to everybody watching, y'all be sure to go to hbcuspringcoming.com to register for the respective cities. Pull up, bring some friends with you. And also, it's an effort to help other HBCU students to pay for school and to pay for their needs for going to school as well. So Lauren Grove,
Absolutely.
George 2.0 Peters, thank you so much for being here on this episode of Classes in Session. Always good to see you both. And for reference for folks, I also went to First Corinthian Baptist in New York many years ago.
We live, we love, we serve.
Yes. Shout out to Pastor Mike.
And had the pleasure of meeting George and his lovely wife, Jovianne. We did the announcements together, the church media announcements by video together.
Absolutely.
So look where we are 10 years later, empowering young people. I love to see it. So again, to anyone watching, be sure to share this episode with friends. Check out the latest and greatest coverage on Black Enterprise's social media channels and also on blackenterprise.com. I'm your host, Ashley Stevens, and for this episode of Classes in Session, class is dismissed.